Picture this. It's 1236, and you're standing in the heart of Delhi, the pulsing capital of a sultanate carved from conquest and ambition. The air hums with the scent of sandalwood and jasmine, drifting from the palace's marble halls. Around you, bazaars thrum with vendors hawking silks, their voices drowned by the clatter of hooves on sun-baked stone. You're no ordinary observer. You're Razia Sultan, the first woman to rule this fractious empire. A queen veiled in authority yet burning with a secret that could topple your throne. Your eyes drift to the royal stables, where a man, tall and dark as the midnight desert, tends to your horses with a quiet strength. His name is Jamal-ud-Din Yaqut, an Abyssinian slave raised to serve, his hands calloused but his gaze fierce with unspoken dreams. When your eyes meet, a spark ignites, dangerous, forbidden, alive. The court whispers of your power, your reforms, your defiance of tradition, but they don't yet know the scandal brewing in your heart. A queen and her slave bound by a love that defies caste, color, and custom. It's a passion that feels like freedom in a gilded cage. But in this world of swords and spies, such love isn't a gift, it's a death sentence. Before we plunge into this tale of passion and peril, if you're captivated by the hidden horrors of history, hit that like button and subscribe for more dark stories that echo across time. Comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I'm amazed we're unraveling these ancient secrets together, connected by our curiosity about the past. You stand atop the ramparts of Delhi's grand fortress, the sun glinting off your jeweled turban, a symbol of a crown no woman was meant to wear. It's 1236, and you are Razia Sultan, the first female ruler of the Delhi Sultanate, a title that feels like both a triumph and a chain. Below, the city sprawls in a tapestry of chaos and color, merchants shouting, camels groaning, the distant clang of armor as your soldiers patrol. Your heart beats with the weight of an empire, but also with something softer, something dangerous. The memory of Jamal-ud-Din Yaqut's eyes meeting yours in the stables yesterday, a fleeting moment that lingers like the scent of rain on desert sand. To understand how you, a queen, came to stand on this precipice of power and forbidden love, you must first grasp the world that forged you, a world of conquest, betrayal, and a throne built on the backs of slaves. The Delhi Sultanate in the 13th century was a crucible of ambition, where Turkic warlords and their descendants wrestled for control over a patchwork of Hindu kingdoms and restless Muslim nobles. Founded by Qutb-ud-Din Aybak, a former slave turned conqueror, the Mamluk dynasty thrived on a paradox. Men born in chains could rise to rule empires, yet a woman's authority was an affront to God and man alike. The air was thick with tension. Mongol hooves thundered on the northern borders, threatening invasion, while local governors schemed to carve out their own fiefdoms. In this world, loyalty was a currency more precious than gold, and betrayal was as common as the dust that coated Delhi's streets. Your father, Sultan Iltutmish, was a rarity, a ruler who valued competence over custom. Himself a former slave, he saw in you his daughter, not just a princess but a leader. While your brothers indulged in wine and poetry, you trained with swords and studied Persian texts on governance, astronomy, and law. The court chronicler Minhaj-i-Siraj noted your father's pride. She is wise, just and endowed with every royal quality, though she be a woman. But wisdom and skill couldn't shield you from the venom of those who saw your gender as a sin. Your father's reign was a masterclass in balancing power. He quelled rebellions, built the towering Qutb Minar as a monument to Muslim might, and navigated the delicate politics of a court where Turkish nobles, Persian scholars, and Indian converts vied for influence. But his death in 1236 plunged the Sultanate into chaos. Your elder brother, Ruknuddin Firuz, ascended the throne only to drown in debauchery and incompetence. The nobles, sensing weakness, whispered of coups while the streets of Delhi buzzed with unrest. Your mother, Shah Turkan, a former concubine turned queen, saw her chance to rule through her son, but her cruelty, ordering executions with the ease of serving tea, turned even allies against her. When assassins ended Ruknuddin's brief reign, the court turned to you not out of love but desperation. At 22 you were crowned Razia Sultan, a name that would echo through history, but also draw daggers from every shadow. Ascending the throne was like stepping into a lion's den with nothing but your wits. You were a woman in a man's world, a Muslim ruler in a land of Hindu traditions, a reformer in a court of conservatives. The nobles, clad in their silk robes and false smiles, bowed to you in public but plotted in private. They despised your refusal to hide behind the purdah, the traditional veil that cloaked women from public life. You rode horses, wielded a sword and held court openly, sitting on a throne where men could see your face, a scandal to the ulama, the religious scholars who muttered that a woman's rule defied divine order. Your reforms were bold. You opened schools for the poor, reduced taxes on struggling farmers and appointed non-Turks, including Indians, to high offices. Minhaji Siraj recorded your decrees with grudging admiration, noting how you governed with justice, unlike the tyrants before her. But justice made enemies. The Turkish nobles, who saw themselves as the Sultanate's true masters, bristled at your defiance of their traditions. Your father's old viziers whispered that you were too young, too reckless, too female to hold the empire together. Your isolation was palpable, a loneliness that clung to you like the heavy brocade of your royal robes. The palace, with its arched corridors and flickering oil lamps, felt less like a home and more like a gilded prison. Your mother, now relegated to the harem, offered no counsel, her eyes cold with resentment at your rise. Your brothers, passed over for the throne, schemed in distant provinces, their loyalty as brittle as dried clay. The court was a maze of spies, servants who reported your every word, guards who watched your every move. You learned to speak in measured tones, to smile when you wanted to scream, to trust no one. Yet in this world of suspicion, one man stood apart. Jamal-ud-Din Yaqut, the Abyssinian slave who managed your stables. He was no ordinary servant. Born in the Horn of Africa, he had been sold into slavery as a boy, his dark skin marking him as an outsider, in a court obsessed with Turkish and Persian lineage. Yet his skill with horses and his quiet intelligence caught your father's eye, earning him a place in the royal household. By the time you took the throne, Yaqut was more than a stable master. He was a confidant, a man whose loyalty wasn't bought with gold, but earned through shared moments of trust. You first noticed him not for his status, but for his presence. In the stables, surrounded by the musk of hay and the snorting of stallions, he moved with a grace that belied his chains. His eyes, deep and unyielding, met yours without fear, a rarity in a court where men bowed or schemed. When you asked his opinion on a new warhorse, his response was thoughtful, his voice steady, free of the flattery that dripped from noble tongues. "A horse, like a ruler, must be strong yet gentle, my lady," he said, and you felt a warmth you hadn't known since childhood. Those moments grew, brief conversations about strategy, shared rides through Delhi's outskirts, laughter over a horse's stubbornness. Each encounter was a rebellion against the world that sought to cage you both. He was a slave, you a queen. He was African, you a Turkic Muslim. Yet in those stolen glances, you found a freedom the throne could never grant. The court, however, was not blind. Whispers began to spread, soft as silk but sharp as daggers. Servants saw you linger too long in the stables, heard the warmth in your voice when you spoke Yaqut's name. The nobles, already resentful of your rule, seized on these rumors like vultures on a carcass. To them, your affection for a slave wasn't just scandal, it was sacrilege. Minhaji Siraj, ever the cautious chronicler, wrote obliquely of favorites who rose too high, but other accounts, like those of later Persian poets, were less discreet, describing a queen bewitched by a black slave's charm. The racial prejudice was venomous. Abyssinians were valued as soldiers or laborers, not as equals. To the nobles, Yaqut's dark skin and low birth made him less than human, a stain on your royal dignity. Their whispers grew into accusations. You were unfit to rule, not just for your gender, but for your heart's betrayal of their traditions. Your reforms only fueled their hatred. When you appointed Yaqut as Amir-i-Akur, master of the royal stables, it was a practical choice. He was skilled, loyal, and trusted. But to the court, it was proof of your weakness, a sign that love had clouded your judgment. The ulama muttered of divine punishment, the nobles of rebellion. In the flickering light of your private chambers, you felt the walls closing in, each rumor a brick in the prison being built around you. Yet you couldn't stop. Yaqut's presence was your rebellion against a world that demanded your submission. When you promoted him further, giving him a seat at your council, the whispers turned to roars. The nobles saw not a queen and her advisor, but a woman and her lover, a scandal that threatened the Sultanate's fragile unity. As you stood on that rampart, gazing at the city you fought to rule, you knew the truth. Your love for Yaqut wasn't just forbidden, It was a spark that could ignite an empire's collapse. And the flames were already rising. You're Razia Sultan, and the year is 1237. The Delhi palace feels like a labyrinth of whispers, every arched corridor echoing with the judgment of those who bow to you by day and plot against you by night. The air is heavy with incense, but it can't mask the scent of betrayal that clings to the silk-clad nobles who fill your court. Your heart, once a fortress of resolve, now trembles with a forbidden fire. Jamal-ud-Din Yaqut, the Abyssinian slave-turned-advisor, stands at your side during council meetings, his presence a quiet anchor in a sea of scheming faces. His dark eyes meet yours, and for a fleeting moment the weight of your crown feels lighter. But the court sees what you feel, and their gazes sharpen like daggers. Your love for Yaqut, a slave who dares to rise above his station, is no longer a secret. It's a scandal, a weapon in the hands of those who would see you fall. Each stolen moment with him is a rebellion against an empire that demands your submission, but it's a rebellion that could cost you everything. The first spark of your connection with Yaqut had been innocent enough, a shared glance in the stables, a conversation about horses that lingered too long. But innocence has no place in a palace where every gesture is dissected, every word a potential noose. You began seeking him out, first under the guise of official duties. You'd summon him to discuss the readiness of your cavalry, the strength of your war horses, but soon the pretense fell away. In the torch-lit shadows of the palace gardens, where jasmine bloomed and nightbirds sang, you spoke of dreams, his of a homeland he barely remembered, yours of a kingdom where justice outshone tradition. His laughter, low and warm, was a melody that drowned out the court's venom. When you rode together beyond Delhi's walls, the wind whipping through your hair, his horse matching yours stride for stride, you felt free for the first time since your coronation. His hand brushed yours as he helped you dismount, and the touch lingered, electric, forbidden, a promise neither of you could voice. Those moments were your sanctuary, but they were also your undoing. The court's spies were everywhere, servants who polished your silver, guards who stood at your gates, even the women of the harem who smiled to your face while reporting to your enemies. They saw the way your eyes softened when Yaqut spoke, the way you leaned closer to hear his counsel. They noted how you dismissed other advisors early, leaving you and Yaqut alone in the candlelit war room, maps spread before you but your minds elsewhere. The chronicler Minhaji Siraj, ever loyal to the Sultanate's image, wrote only that you favored certain officers unduly, but the poets of later years were less discreet, weaving tales of a queen enslaved by her heart to a man born in chains. The truth was simpler and far more dangerous. You loved him. Not as a queen loves a subject, but as a woman loves a man with a hunger that defied the rigid lines of caste, color, and creed. Yaqut was no ordinary slave. Taken from Abyssinia as a boy, he'd survived the brutal journey across seas and deserts to reach Delhi, his spirit unbroken where others crumbled. His skill with horses had earned him a place in your father's stables, but it was his mind, sharp, unyielding, unafraid, that drew you to him. He spoke of strategy with the confidence of a general, of justice with the passion of a poet. When you named him Amir-i-Akbar, master of the royal stables, the court grumbled, but they could not deny his competence. When you elevated him to your council, giving him a voice in matters of war and governance, their grumbles turned to outrage. To them, Yaqut was an affront, a black slave sitting among Turkish nobles, his dark skin a stark contrast to their pale pride. They called him the Abyssinian, spitting the word like a curse, as if his origins erased his worth. The ulema, the religious scholars, whispered that your favor toward him was a sin, a violation of the natural order where slaves served and queens obeyed the will of men. Your love grew in defiance of their hatred. In the quiet of your private chambers, where the walls were adorned with Persian tapestries and the air smelled of rosewater, you and Yaqut shared moments that felt stolen from another world. He told you stories of his childhood, of vast savannas and a mother's lullabies in a tongue he could no longer speak. You shared your fears, the weight of a throne that demanded you be more than human. Once, under the cover of a moonless night, you slipped into the stables where he waited, his silhouette framed by the glow of a single lamp. You spoke until dawn, your voices low, your hands entwined, the world beyond forgotten. These were the moments that kept you alive, that made the crown's burden bearable. But each touch, each whispered word, was a thread in the noose tightening around you both. The court's whispers grew louder, more vicious. The nobles, already chafing under your reforms, your schools for the poor, your refusal to veil, your appointment of non-Turks to high offices, saw your affection for Yaqut as the final proof of your unfitness to rule. They spun tales of debauchery, claiming you'd abandoned your duties for a slave's bed, though no evidence supported their lies. The bazaars buzzed with gossip, carried by traders and pilgrims across the sultanate. A Persian merchant, writing to his brother in Isfahan, described the mood. The queen loves a slave and the nobles sharpen their swords, for a woman's heart cannot rule an empire. Racial prejudice fueled their fury. Yaqut's Abyssinian heritage made him a target for their venom, his dark skin a symbol of everything they despised, foreign, low-born, unworthy. They mocked his origins, calling him a beast unfit for a queen's favor, their words dripping with the same cruelty that had once justified his enslavement. You tried to shield him, to protect your love from their poison. You kept Yaqut close, assigning him guards loyal to you alone, but even they couldn't stop the rumors. When you rode through Delhi's streets, side by side with Yaqut, the crowds cheered your name, but behind their adoration was a growing unease. The ulama preached sermons about divine order, warning that a queen who loved a slave invited God's wrath. The nobles, led by figures like Malik al-Tunya, the governor of Bathinda, began to plot in earnest. Al-Tunya, a Turkic warrior with ambitions of his own, saw your love as a weakness to exploit. He spread lies that Yaqut controlled you, that the slave was the true ruler of Delhi. The accusation stung because it held a grain of truth, not that Yaqut sought power, but that his counsel had become your strength, his love your refuge. In the privacy of your chambers, you and Yaqut spoke of the danger. He urged you to distance yourself, to send him away for his safety, but the thought was unbearable. "I'd rather lose my throne than lose you," you whispered, your voice trembling with a defiance you both knew was reckless. He took your hand, his touch steady despite the fear in his eyes. "Then we stand together, my queen," he said, "and face whatever comes." But what was coming was a storm you couldn't outrun. The nobles' plots thickened, their letters flying to distant provinces, rallying governors and commanders to their cause. They didn't just want to end your love, they wanted to end your reign. Your reforms, your gender, your heart, all were crimes in their eyes, and Yaqut was the scapegoat for their rebellion. As 1238 dawned, the palace felt like a battlefield before the first arrow flies. Every smile hid a dagger, every bow a betrayal. You continued to rule, issuing decrees, hearing petitions, but your mind was never far from Yaqut. His presence at your side, once a comfort, now felt like a beacon drawing your enemies closer. The court chroniclers like Minhaji Siraj noted the growing unrest, writing of discontent among the amirs, stirred by the queen's unwise attachments. But they didn't see what you saw in Yaqut, a man who loved you not for your crown but for your soul. Each night as you lay awake, the flicker of oil lamps casting shadows on the walls, you wondered how long your love could survive in a world that demanded its destruction. The answer was coming, and it would be written in blood. You're Razia Sultan, and it's 1239. The Delhi palace, once your fortress, now feels like a trap, its marble halls echoing with the footsteps of spies and the whispers of traitors. The air is thick with the scent of betrayal, sharper than the rosewater that perfumes your chambers. You sit on your throne, the weight of your jeweled turban heavier than ever, while Jamal-ud-Din Yaqut stands at your side, his presence both your strength and your vulnerability. The court's eyes bore into you, their gazes laced with venom. Your love for Yaqut, the Abyssinian slave turned advisor, is no longer a whispered scandal. It's a war cry for those who seek your downfall. The nobles, led by scheming warlords like Malik al-Tunya, have turned your heart into a weapon, branding your rule as a disgrace to the sultanate. Every decree you issue, every reform you champion is drowned out by their accusations. A queen bewitched by a slave cannot rule. As the storm gathers, you feel the ground slipping beneath you, and the love that once set you free now pulls you toward ruin. The spark that lit this fire was your decision to elevate Yaqut beyond the stables, making him a key advisor in your council. His promotion to Emir-i-Akor, master of the royal stables, had already stirred resentment, but giving him a voice in matters of war and governance was a declaration of trust that the nobles read as weakness. To them, Yaqut was not a man, but a symbol of everything they despised. his dark skin, his slave origins, his audacity to rise above his station. The chronicler Minhaj-i-Siraj, cautious in his loyalty to the Sultanate, noted the growing unrest. The emirs grew restless, their hearts poisoned by the queen's favor toward one unfit for such honor. The nobles' prejudice was relentless, their words dripping with racial scorn. They called Yaqut the black slave, spitting the phrase as if his Abyssinian heritage stripped him of humanity. In their eyes, your love was not just forbidden, it was an insult to their Turkish pride, a stain on the Sultanate's honor. The court became a battlefield of whispers and schemes. In the flickering light of council meetings, you saw the nobles' false smiles, their bowed heads masking plans to unseat you. They spread lies through the bazaars, claiming you'd abandoned your duties for nights of debauchery with Yaqut. No evidence supported these slanders, but truth was irrelevant in a world ruled by power. The ulama, the religious scholars, fanned the flames, preaching that your unveiled face and your favor toward a slave invited divine wrath. Their sermons echoed in mosques across Delhi, turning public sentiment against you. A Persian traveler, writing in his journal, captured the mood. The queen's heart has undone her crown, for she loves what the court despises, and the emirs sharpen their blades in secret. Your reforms, schools for the poor, justice for the marginalized, were twisted into proof of your weakness. Your love for Yaqut, the final evidence of your unfitness to rule. You tried to protect him, assigning loyal guards to shadow his every move, but the palace was a nest of vipers. Servants who once bowed to you now reported to your enemies, their loyalty bought with gold or fear. In the stables where you and Yaqut once found solace, you overheard whispers of plots, nobles planning to seize provincial strongholds, governors rallying armies under the guise of loyalty. Malik al-Tunya, the ambitious governor of Patinda, emerged as the ringleader. His letters, intercepted by your spies, revealed his plan. Use your love for Yaqut as a rallying cry to unite the nobles against you. He called you a bewitched woman, unfit to lead, and Yaqut a usurper who controlled the throne. The accusation cut deep, not because it was true, but because it twisted your love into a weapon to destroy you both. The tension broke in early 1240, when rebellion erupted like a monsoon flood. Al-Tunya, backed by Turkish nobles, declared open defiance. Refusing to send tribute from Patinda, other governors followed, their armies massing in distant forts. The court's whispers turned to shouts demanding Yaqut's removal, or worse. You faced an impossible choice. Distance yourself from the man you love to appease your enemies, or stand by him and risk your throne. In the quiet of your chambers, you and Yaqut spoke of the gathering storm. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed fear. "Send me away, my queen," he urged, his hand gripping yours. "Let me disappear before they use me to destroy you." But the thought of losing him was a blade to your heart. "If I lose you, I lose myself," you whispered, your voice fierce with a love that defied reason. You chose to fight, to hold him close, even as the empire crumbled around you. The rebellion spread, each province a spark in a growing blaze. Your loyalists, a dwindling band of soldiers and advisors, urged you to act decisively. You summoned your army, donning armor to lead them yourself, a queen on horseback defying a world that demanded your submission. Yaqut rode at your side, his presence a reminder of what you fought for, not just a throne but a love that dared to exist. As you marched toward Patinda to confront Al-Tunya, the air was thick with dust and dread, the clatter of swords and hooves a grim symphony. The nobles' lies had taken root, painting you as a queen who'd traded her crown for a slave's embrace. But you knew the truth. Your love for Yaqut was the only thing keeping you human in a world that demanded you be a god. As you approached Patinda, the weight of what was coming pressed against your chest. The nobles weren't just fighting for power, they were fighting to erase you, to bury your love in blood and ash. Yaqut's hand brushed yours in a fleeting moment of courage, but his eyes held a truth you couldn't face. This rebellion would not end with victory. The palace, the stables, the torch-lit nights of whispered dreams, all was slipping away. The court's daggers were no longer hidden, and the price of your love was about to be paid in full. Your Razia Sultan, and it's 1240. The dusty plains of Patinda stretch before you, the horizon shimmering with the heat of betrayal. Your army, a patchwork of loyalists and reluctant conscripts, marches under a sun that burns as fiercely as the rebellion tearing your empire apart. At your side rides Jamal-ud-Din Yaqut, his dark silhouette steady on his warhorse, his eyes fixed on the distant fortress where Malik Al-Tunia's rebel banners snap in the wind. Your love for this Abyssinian slave, once a secret whispered in Delhi's torchlit halls, is now a war cry for your enemies. The nobles have branded you a disgrace, a queen bewitched by a low-born lover, and their rebellion seeks not just your throne but your annihilation. The clash is coming, and with it, a tide of blood that will drown your dreams. Every hoofbeat is a heartbeat, every breath a countdown to the moment when love and empire collide in a storm of steel and sorrow. The march to Bathinda was a gauntlet of desperation. Your forces, outnumbered and weary, faced a coalition of Turkish nobles united by their hatred of you and Yaqut. The chronicler Minhaj-i-Siraj, ever careful with his words, noted the disorder among the emirs, but spared the grisly details that soldiers whispered around campfires. Al-Tunia's rebellion had spread like plague, with governors from Lahore to Multan joining his cause, their armies swelling with mercenaries and zealots. They painted you as a heretic queen, your love for Yaqut proof of moral decay. The ulama's sermons echoed across mosques, calling for your downfall in the name of divine order. You rode at the head of your troops, your armor gleaming, your unveiled face a defiance of their traditions. Yaqut, now a commander despite his slave origins, rode beside you, his presence a shield against the whispers that cut deeper than swords. But the soldiers' eyes betrayed their doubts. Could a woman and her slave lover lead them to victory? The battle at Bathinda was chaos incarnate. Dust choked the air, turning day to twilight as swords clashed and horses screamed. You fought with the fury of a queen defending her heart, your blade flashing as you cut through rebel lines. Yaqut was a whirlwind. His skill, honed by years in the stables, now turned to war. For a moment it seemed you might prevail, that love and loyalty could triumph over betrayal. But the rebels were too many, their hatred too fierce. A traitor within your ranks, some say a captain bribed by Al-Tunia, opened a gap in your lines and the tide turned. Yaqut fell, his horse collapsing under a hail of arrows, his body crumpling into the blood-soaked sand. You saw his eyes, wide with pain and love, as he reached for you one last time. His scream was drowned by the roar of battle, but it echoed in your soul, a sound of loss that would haunt you forever. The rebels surged forward, and you were torn from your horse, your sword ripped from your hand, your crown a mockery as you were bound in chains. The aftermath was a descent into hell. Dragged to Bathinda's fortress, you were paraded before Al-Tunia's men, your royal robes torn, your face streaked with dirt and tears. The nobles jeered, calling you the slave's whore, their racial venom aimed as much at Yaqut's memory as at you. Minhaj-i-Siraj's account is silent on these humiliations, but later poets wrote of a queen stripped of glory, her heart bleeding for a love now dust. Al-Tunia, a man whose ambition outweighed his honor, saw an opportunity in your defeat. He offered you a twisted bargain. Marry him, align your name with his rebellion, and live. Refusal meant death, a traitor's execution. Beheading or worse, your body left for vultures. Your heart, shattered by Yaqut's death, recoiled at the thought of another's touch. But survival was a fire that still burned within you. You agreed, not out of love, but out of a desperate hope to reclaim your throne and honor Yaqut's memory. The marriage to Al-Tunia was a farce, a union sealed in a fortress reeking of blood and ambition. The ceremony, held under the shadow of rebel banners, was devoid of joy. No music, no feasts, only the cold stares of men who saw you as a trophy, not a queen. Al-Tunia, with his hawk-like eyes and warrior's swagger, treated you as a prize to legitimize his power, but you were no longer the defiant ruler of Delhi. You were a prisoner, your spirit chained as surely as your wrists had been. Yet even in captivity you plotted. You whispered to loyal servants, sent coded messages to allies in Delhi, and waited for a chance to turn the tables. Al-Tunia, sensing your defiance, grew restless. When word came that Delhi's nobles had crowned your brother Bahram Shah in your absence, Al-Tunia saw his own ambitions crumbling. He rallied his forces, with you at his side, to march on Delhi and reclaim the throne, not for you but for himself. The final stand came near Kaithal, a barren stretch of land where hope went to die. Your combined forces, a fragile alliance of your loyalists and Al-Tunia's rebels, faced a royal army loyal to Bahram. The battle was brief and brutal. Your soldiers, demoralized by months of chaos, faltered under the onslaught. Al-Tunia fought with the desperation of a man who knew he'd gambled and lost, but a spear found his heart, and he fell, his blood mingling with the dust. You, clad in armor, once more fought until your strength gave out. Captured again, you were no longer a queen but a traitor in the eyes of the new regime. The chronicles are vague on your final moments, but local legends tell of a grim end. Some say you were beheaded, your head displayed on a spike to warn others. Others claim you were abandoned in the wilderness, robbed and murdered by bandits, your body left unburied under a merciless sun. The truth is lost to history, but the horror is clear. Your love for Yaqut, a flame that burned against all odds, had led you to this, a queen reduced to a corpse, her empire a memory. The execution, whether by blade or betrayal, was more than a death. It was the annihilation of a dream. Your love for Yaqut had been a rebellion against a world that caged you both, but that world struck back with a vengeance that spared nothing. The nobles who orchestrated your fall celebrated, their power restored but at a cost. The Delhi Sultanate, already fractured, slid deeper into chaos, its glory dimmed by the blood of its first queen. Your death was a spectacle, a warning to those who dared defy the rigid lines of power, caste, and color. But in its brutality, it sowed the seeds of your legend, a queen who loved fiercely, ruled bravely, and paid the ultimate price. The dust has settled on the blood-soaked plains of Cathal, and you, Razia Sultan, are no more. It's 1240. And the Delhi Sultanate reels from the loss of its first and only queen, her body left to the mercy of bandits or the executioner's blade. The air carries the faint echo of your final stand, the clash of swords and the cry of a love torn apart by an empire's wrath. Your forbidden bond with Jamal-ud-Din Yaqut, the Abyssinian slave who held your heart, lies shattered, its embers scattered across a kingdom now ruled by your brother Bahram Shah. The nobles who orchestrated your downfall raised their goblets in Delhi's marble halls, toasting the restoration of their order. But their victory is hollow. Your death, meant to erase you, has instead carved your name into history. A queen who defied the chains of tradition, whose love became a legend that outlasted her throne. As the sun sets over the Sultanate, your story lingers, a haunting reminder of the price paid for love that dared to cross the lines of power, caste, and color. The immediate aftermath of your execution was a triumph for your enemies. The Turkish nobles, led by men like Malik al-Tunya, had sought to crush not just you but the very idea of a woman's rule. With Yaqut dead in battle and you gone, they believed they had cleansed the Sultanate of its scandal. Bahram Shah, your brother, ascended the throne, his reign propped up by the same nobles who had betrayed you. The chronicler Minhaji Siraj, ever cautious, recorded your fall with clinical precision. Sultana Raziyat was defeated, and the throne passed to her kin. But his words hid the truth. Your death was no mere transfer of power. It was a spectacle, a brutal warning to any who dared challenge the rigid hierarchies of the Delhi court. Your body, whether beheaded or abandoned to robbers, was denied the honor of a royal burial. Some say your remains were left to decay under Cathal's merciless sun, a final humiliation for a queen who had dared to love a slave. Others whisper of a secret grave, tended by loyalists who mourned you in silence. Yet the noble's victory was a spark that ignited chaos. The Delhi Sultanate, already fractured by Mongol threats and provincial revolts, sank deeper into turmoil under Bahram's weak rule. The same nobles who had cheered your downfall soon turned on each other, their greed and ambition unraveling the empire you had fought to hold together. Minhaji Siraj noted the unrest. The amirs, having slain their queen, found no peace, for their hearts were divided. Your reforms, schools for the poor, justice for the marginalized, were abandoned, replaced by corruption and infighting. The provinces you had sought to unify broke apart, governors declaring themselves kings in all but name. Your death, meant to restore order, instead exposed the Sultanate's fragility, a kingdom built on conquest but brittle with betrayal. Your story, however, refused to die. In the years that followed, it took root in the hearts of those who remembered you not as a fallen queen, but as a symbol of defiance. Persian poets wove your love for Yaqut into ballads, transforming your scandal into a tragic romance that echoed across bazaars and courts. One anonymous verse preserved in later chronicles sang of a queen whose heart burned for a slave, her crown no match for love's fierce flame. Your tomb, whether in Delhi's bustling lanes or Cathal's quiet fields, became a site of pilgrimage, where women and outcasts whispered prayers for courage. The historian Farishta, writing centuries later, called you a ruler whose wisdom outshone her brothers, undone by a love the world could not forgive. In modern times, your story inspired Bollywood films and novels, painting you as a feminist icon, a queen who challenged gender and caste with a sword in one hand and love in the other. The legacy of your execution stretched beyond the Sultanate's borders. Your death exposed the cruelty of a system that punished difference, where a woman's power and a slave's worth were crimes against an unforgiving order. European travelers, hearing tales of your reign, carried them to distant courts, where scholars debated the morality of a world that killed its queens for love. Your story influenced early Islamic debates on female leadership, with some jurists citing your rule as proof of a woman's capacity, while others used your fall to justify their bans. The racial prejudice that fueled Yaqut's vilification lingered, a grim reminder of how empires built on conquest dehumanized those they deemed lesser. Your love, born in defiance of such hatred, became a mirror held up to history, reflecting the cost of prejudice and the courage it took to resist it. The psychological impact on your people was profound. Your execution created a collective wound, a shared memory of a queen who dared to be human in a world that demanded she be divine. For the women of the harem, your story was a whispered warning. Love beyond your station was a path to ruin. For the slaves and outcasts, Yaqut's rise and fall was a bitter lesson. Freedom was a dream that ended in blood. Yet for others, your defiance was a spark, a call to resist the chains of tradition. The bards who sang of you in Delhi's streets kept your spirit alive, turning your tragedy into a rallying cry for those who dreamed of a world where love could conquer caste. Your death, meant to silence you, instead gave you a voice that echoed through centuries. Reflecting on your story today, we see uncomfortable truths about power and passion. The nobles who condemned you were not monsters, but men shaped by a system that equated difference with danger. Their cruelty, cloaked in the guise of honor, reveals the fragility of empires built on exclusion. Your love for Yaqut, a flame that burned through the darkness of prejudice, reminds us that the heart can defy even the sharpest blade. But it also warns us of the cost. Love that challenges power rarely escapes unpunished. In our modern world, where battles over identity and equality rage on, your story resonates. The lines of caste, race, and gender may have shifted, but the struggle to love freely remains. Your execution, a spectacle of medieval cruelty, echoes in every heart that dares to defy society's rules. As we walk the streets of Delhi today, where your tomb lies amid the hum of a modern city, we're reminded that history's grandest palaces hide its darkest secrets. Tourists marvel at the Qutb Minar, unaware of the queen whose love shook its foundations. Your ghost and Yaqut's lingers in those marble corridors, demanding we bear witness to a love that defied an empire and paid the ultimate price. Your story is no mere footnote. It's a testament to human resilience, a reminder that some loves are worth dying for, and that even in defeat, a queen's heart can inspire a world to dream of freedom. The blood-soaked sands of Kaithal have long since blown away, but your legacy endures, a beacon for those who dare to love against all odds, and a warning that empires, built